Hey guys, welcome back to Bible in the Backyard. I know it's been a week since I've posted and updated, um, and you're probably wondering, or maybe not wondering, what happened to David, um, and whatnot. I have a ton of energy today, so if I get a little crazy, sorry. um, hey bud.
Can I have a Kool-Aid jammer from the Kool-Aid box?
Yeah.
Where all those like the blue and the
Interlude. I was bingy. Um, no, we are still with the story of David, and once we finish up David and Saul, I might stop David, go to something else, and then come back and talk about David some more. Because there's just a lot that happens. So last time, I don't have my notes right in front of me because I have a lot of stuff in between each thing. Last time we talked about David going into the house of Saul, and then Saul figuring out that Saul's slowly going mad, and wants David dead. But thankfully, David and Johnathan and David and Michael, David and Michal are husband and wife, and then David and Johnathan are best friends. So, and Johnathan is one of Saul's sons. So we pick up the story in 1 Samuel, which is in the Old Testament. It's near the front. It's right after Joshua judges Ruth. So we pick up in the first verse of the 19th chapter of the book of 1 Samuel. And the story goes, And Saul spake to Johnathan his son, and to all his servants, that they should kill David. But Johnathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David, and Johnathan told David, saying, Saul my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, abide in a secret place, and hide thyself. I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee, and what I see that I will tell thee. And Johnathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, Let not the king sin against his servant against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, because his works have been to thee word very good. For he did put his life in his hands, and slew the Philistine. And the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest it, and didst rejoice. Wherefore, when wilt thou sin against innocent blood to slay David without a cause? Like, what did David do to you? Like, he's innocent. You shouldn't go after somebody who's innocent. Come on. And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Johnathan, and Saul sware, As the Lord liveth, he shall not be slain. And Johnathan called David, and Johnathan showed him all those things. And Johnathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence, as in times past. And there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistine, and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. In verse 9 it says, And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, and he sat in his house with a javelin in his hand. And David played with his hand. So, of course, David's the one that could play the harp and would help get rid of Saul's troubled spirit. And so he was doing that again, to try and help Saul. And Saul's just twirling a hand knife in his hand, a javelin in his hand. And Saul sought to smite David, even unto the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him, and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So even Michal knows. David's wife knows. So David's welcome back into the house until the next war, and he's sent out and, of course, wins. Comes back. And then Saul tells his whole household, and even David's wife knows that the next morning David's going to be gone unless David goes somewhere. So David's wife has a plan. So Michal let David down through a window. This is verse 12. And he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster and covered it with a cloth. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, "He is sick." And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, "Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may slay him." And when the messengers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed with a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster. And Saul said unto Michal, "Why hast thou deceived me so, and sent away mine enemy, that he is escaped?" And Michal answered Saul, he said unto me, "Let me go, why should I kill thee?" So at that moment, Michal's like, he threatened me. If I didn't let him go, he was going to kill me. But that's not what it was at all. Michal was trying to save David's life. So in verse 18 it says, "So David fled and escaped and came to Samuel to Ramah and told him all that Saul had done. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth." Sure. "And it was told Saul, saying, Behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And David sent messengers to take David, and Saul sent messengers to take David," in verse 20. "And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they prophesied also. Then, so now Saul plans to go. In verse 22, it says, "Then he also went to Ramah and came to a great well that is in Sechu. And he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And one said, Behold, they be at Naioth in Ramah. And he went thither to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah." And this is interesting in verse 24. This is really, really, really interesting because kings don't do this. Kings don't do this. "And he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore saying, Is Saul also among the prophets?" So at this point, it's pretty clear that Saul has basically lost his mind. Thankfully, again, kind of rehashing that Saul's own daughter helps her husband David escape. She tricks the servants. But also David found refuge in Samuel, and that's amazing. But you basically have in here, in my notes, it says, "The king lay aside his royal clothes, perhaps as a sign that he was soon to lay aside the kingship. He lay down naked, an act of further humiliation for anyone, but especially for someone such of a high rank." And it was just completely out of character for Saul. Absolutely, completely out of character. So we continue into chapter 20. And so in verse 1 in chapter 20 it says, "And David fled from Naioth in Ramah, and came and said before Johnathan, What have I done? What is mine iniquity? What is my sin before your father? And why does he seek to kill me? What have I done wrong? What is it? And why does he want to kill me? And he said unto him, God forbid thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing either great or small, but that he will show it to me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. And David sware moreover, and said, Thou, father, certainly knoweth I have found grace in thine eyes. And he said, Let not Johnathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as the Lord liveth, as the soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death. Then in verse 4 it says, Then said Johnathan unto David, Whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. And David said unto Johnathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even. So in the evening. If thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me, that he might run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all his family. If, this is verse 7, this is really important, if he say thus, It is well, thy servant shall have peace. But if he be very wroth, then be sure that evil is determined by him. Therefore thou shalt deal kindly with thy servant, for thou hast brought thy servant into covenant of the Lord with thee. Notwithstanding, if there be in me iniquity, slay me thyself. For why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? So David's explaining to him, I have this plan. I'm going to go hide, and you're going to cover for me. But we're going to see how Saul reacts and see where his heart truly lies. And so Johnathan retorts back in verse 9 and says, And Johnathan said, Far be it from thee, for I knew certainly that evil were determined by my father to come upon thee. Then would not I tell it thee? Then said David to Johnathan, Who shall tell me? For what if thy father answer thee roughly? Basically, what if he overhears? What if he does this? What if he does that? Then Johnathan said unto David, Come, let us go into the field. And they went out, both of them, into the field. So they went out to basically not be heard by anyone. In verse 12 it says, And Johnathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow at any time, or the third day, behold, if there be good toward David, then I shall not send unto thee and show it to thee. But the Lord do so much more to Johnathan, if it pleases my father to do thee evil. Sorry, guys. Then I will show it thee, and send thee away, that thou mayest go in peace. And the Lord be with thee, and he hath been with my father. So now, Johnathan doesn't only just make a covenant with David, he makes a covenant with David's house. Which means basically, I'm thinking that it would cover David's future sons, and his family. So in verse 14 it says, And thou shalt not only while yet I show me the kindness of the Lord, that I die not, but also thou shalt not cut off thy kindness from my house forever. No, not where the Lord hath cut off enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. So Johnathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, Let the Lord even acquire it at the hand of David's enemies. And Johnathan caused David to swear again, because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Then Johnathan said to David, Tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. And when thou hast stayed 3 days, then thou shalt go down quickly, and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself, when the business was in hand. It shall remain by the stone of Ezel. And I will shoot 3 arrows in the side thereof, as though I shot at a mark. And behold, I will send a lad, saying, Go and find out the arrows. If I expressly say unto the lad, Behold, the arrows are on this side of thee, take them, then come out. For there is peace to thee, and no hurt, as the Lord liveth. But if I say unto the young man, Behold, the arrows are beyond thee, go thy way, for the Lord hath sent thee away. So basically, he's saying, I'll let you know whether or not, by word of mouth, that if you should stay or you should run. And as touching as a matter which have been spoken, behold, the Lord between me and thee forever. So Saul, of course, questions David's absence because he is so important. And he goes and he didn't really say anything the first day. He didn't really even say anything really even the second day. He didn't really say anything. He just kind of asked, where's David? Is he okay? Is he really in is he in Bethlehem? And then I feel like on the third day, he says in verse 30, and it says, Then Saul's anger was kindled against Johnathan, because evidently Saul's trying to figure this out, whether or not Jonathan's trying to help David. And he said unto him, Thou son of the preserved rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion, and unto the own confusion of the mother's nakedness? So he's blaming Johnathan for being friends with David. For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch me him unto me, for he shall surely die. And Johnathan answered Saul his father, and said unto him, Wherefore shall he be slain? What has he done? And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, and whereby Johnathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. So Johnathan arose from the table in the fierce anger, and did eat no meat for the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, because his father had done him shame. And it came to pass in the morning that Johnathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and the little lad with him. And he said unto the lad, Run and find now the arrows which I shot. And as the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the lad was come to the place of the arrow which Johnathan had shot, Johnathan cried after the lad, and said, Is not the arrow beyond thee? And Johnathan cried after the lad, Make speed, haste, stay not. And Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came back to his master. But the lad knew not anything, only Johnathan and David knew the matter. And Johnathan gave his artillery unto the lad, and said unto him, Go carry them to the city. And as soon as the lad was gone, David arose out of a place toward the south, and fell on his face to the ground, and bowed himself 3 times, and they kissed one another, and David wept with one another until David exceeded. And Johnathan said to David, Go in peace, for as so much we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord be between me and thee, between my seed and thy seed forever. And when he arose, he departed, and Johnathan went back into the city. So Johnathan basically is an unsung hero in this, because he keeps David under wraps. He protects him. Johnathan ultimately discovers where his father's heart lies, in verses 24 through 34, and Saul still wants David killed, and there's even so much more through this, and David goes to many different cities and many different countries and provinces that, Saul kind of just tries to follow him and tries to basically find David to kill him. So next week we'll talk about that also. And then we will talk about another person in the Bible or some more stories in the Bible. But we get to see David's character, we get to see Jonathan's character during this, and I think it's really, really, really cool how they support each other, and not just from a friendship point of view, but a godly point of view. And I think that is what is amazing through this, is that it's not just David and Saul being best friends, just being best friends, to be best friends. They're literally brought together to be friends because the Lord has basically had his hand on them. And I am so thankful for my friendships in my life that the Lord has had his hand on throughout since I was 3 and 4. And now that, and now that I'm basically my entire life, he's had his hands on different things and taken his hands away from things. And and that's the beauty of God, is that he supplies us with the people that we need around us. And he does that to David too. He does that even with Saul's own daughter. He shows it with Johnathan multiple times. He shows it with, again, just who David is in general at this point of the story is just amazing. Because if someone wanted to come and try to kill me and I had done nothing wrong, I would probably run away. But I don't think I would have the composure that David's having right now. I think it is scary for him, and it is torturous for him, and it is terrifying that he's having to run from this king that he has supported and that he has envied and that he has lived with and that he has looked up to, and he's lived in his house and he's been a part of his army, and the Lord's blessed it all. And now he's having to leave everything behind and not just go back to Bethlehem, but he's having to run across the countries and run across different cities that he's taken over, and that he will he'll run back into old enemies, and he'll run back into different parts of the land that he's either not familiar with or he is familiar with. But it's interesting where David's going to go in this, and David's decisions with it too. But I hope you guys have blessed friendships. I hope you guys have a blessed day, a blessed week, morning or night, wherever you're at in the world. But I am so thankful that I got to talk to you guys today. And I'll see you again next time. See ya.